more visual, to be more, AR and VR, etc. So it's very important to, even from a marketer standpoint, to understand how the nature of content is changing and how they can adapt to that to get their messaging across to users who are using those platforms, and of course doing a story, from a story telling to a story selling, and bridge that gap. So we are here to kind of discuss a couple of more examples during the session, but yeah, that's my take.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure it's a difficult session to sustain, but guys, I'm really excited. Why? For this is one of the panel which I feel has a relevant audience in the panel. I mean, a content creator, curator is sitting down here. A e-marketer is there. A brand advertiser who has his own e-commerce platform, and someone like me who do not have anything in e-commerce but depend on all of them. I think we're trying to see how we can touch upon this angle from each of the stage. Bhavna, I feel that storytelling, story selling is same. I mean, I don't think so. It's a different criteria. This has been doing. We have been doing this since childhood. Yeah, our parents, grandparents told us stories to either to make us sleep or either to get the work done in some right way. So this has been going since ages. There's no new thing. I mean, advertisers have developed this from them, from our childhood. From a perspective, everyone loves stories. Let's be very honest. Everyone loves stories. Statistics are heard. I mean, stories are felt, and if you feel something, you'll remember it. So that's where storytelling or story selling is going to be really important. And from a perspective, I feel we used to believe in my ex-organization Vodafone, we used to believe a concept called storytelling or story selling. There are two important things into it. That's simple. एक hero है, एक villain है. There has to be a hero in a story and there has to be a villain. I mean, hero here is the consumer, obviously. I mean, if I am an advertiser, I want the consumer to become the hero. Villain are the problems he is facing. So if you bring both of them together, I mean, Amitabh Bachchan is Amitabh Bachchan and Amrish Puri is Amrish Puri because of the characters they have played. So if you bring them together and if you make the hero destroy the villain by solving the problems, you're going to be there. So take telecom example. Our hero was the subscriber, villain is network. Take e-commerce example. Hero is shoppers, villains are anything. It could be pricing, discounting, ease of delivery. So those are problems which the hero need to sort it. And if you have a great combo of hero and villain into a scenario, this storytelling or story selling will do the job. I think that's where we are from a perspective.
Very, very interesting perspective, Neil. I think Bollywood always sells, and it's always good to wake up people as well when you talk about Amitabh Bachchan and Amrish Puri right in the middle of the day. So, coming to your more recent organization, right? We know that as beauty big products are far more impulse buys, right? So the concept of story selling becomes far more relevant because if I like something, I want to buy it right now. I don't want to wait for it. And if I see a brand ad, I'll say that, okay, yeah, it's nice, but it's for somebody else. So Aishwarya Rai using a certain product versus me trying to find it will be like trying to experience it would be two very, very different things. So what's your take on that?
I think so. I am not selling anything on Aishwarya Rai or XYZ things, but what I want to highlight here is that you rightly pointed out that offline selling, I mean, how many of us in this room would have ran away or walked away when a salesperson comes to them? Or a telecaller is calling. I mean, most of us. Then we came to a scenario where digital came and everyone started buying online, but guys, the emotions are same. How many times have we cringed on an email which comes telling you to buy something? How many times you've got irritated when a remarketing campaign is targeted to you, but you have already either purchased it or you don't want to purchase it. You made a decision, but still you give. So that's where advertisers really need to put more focus, where to draw lines, where to be there present. If you irritate the consumer, they're not going to buy you. I think marketeers have moved from a scenario where we do not want to close the deal now. We want the consumer for long term. So I don't want to sell it now. I want him to come back again and again to me. So coming to your point from a perspective of how it is for us, so I'm not dragging it more, but for us on ground, beauty advisors at a retail store are storytellers. I mean, people get educated through these beauty advertisers on ground. All of a sudden, e-commerce came in a platform where sabko e-commerce pe buy karna, and it's all of us want to buy on e-commerce. So again, the problem. of timing. So we want to satisfy that timing through e-commerce. So for us, those storytellers on e-commerce became become product lines like UCAM or a Modi Face, which we have acquired globally, or a Beauty Plus app. These are our online beauty advisors because we are Indians. Let's be honest. I want to touch, I want to feel, I want to know how it looks on me before I buy it, right? I mean, it's a hard known fact that we click 10 photos, edit 5, upload 1. Let's be very honest, we need something or other. So that these guys are what so that's where we try and sell our stories online through content like this.
Sure. Thank you, Neil. Achin, that brings me to you. And considering what Neil was talking about, e-commerce platforms wanting to actually retain consumers for a longer time. So what do you think from your perspective you do differently from the other e-com portals to make sure that your consumers are there for longer?
Yeah, I think a lot of things, but I'll just stick to the topic here. For us, fashion, as I was talking about, is a browse category. It is not a transactional category. A lot of our consumers actually come and just want to experience the whole look and feel of different kind of apparel or the fashion merchandise that we have, and at some point they will take a decision, right? So the number of times people buy in a year is much less than the number of times people come and browse, right? So that is the kind of category we operate in. And therefore, for us, it is important that we are, creating these small moments of joy and inspiration for them when they are at least on the app. That's one way to sort of bring the consumer back in. And then, from a business standpoint, making sure that we are on top of the right trends, on top of the right, topical conversations, and they are somehow representative on the app is very, very important because consumer is extremely connected. They already have a view before they come to the platform in most cases. And what they're looking for is to get something additional to what they already know, right? A unique perspective from a brand which is not present right now from what they may have actually looked at from outside, right? So that unique fashion perspective is what we endeavor to bring out. The other piece of this is, I think, just a small nuance. When we talk about storytelling versus story selling, one of the challenges as marketeers that we face, actually we commit those mistakes also and still try and guard against is jumping into selling before we actually tell it, right? And I think that is so very important. Most of my time before this I spent in the media industry, where storytelling was always such an important thing before you actually start and sell. And when brands used to come to us to say, integrate, I think it was the story first and the brand second. When you come on this side of the table and become a marketeer, you suddenly, because of the ROI pressures, you want to have the brand first and the story second, which is a very big mistake. And that I think you have to have the right balance and the right sort of content partner on the other end who can actually push back and challenge your brand to stick to what is the consumer hero and villain story, and not sort of bring in let's say a guest appearance unnecessarily every time.
That's the perfect kind of a plug-in for Akshay to come in. And being a content provider, you have to face people like the three of us sitting on the panel and asking you to put your brand, like the brand up front. What do you think is the best way for this kind of a thing to take forward?
No, I completely agree with what Achint and Neil had to say. At the end of the day, it is not selling at the point where he's there, right? It's more about an experiential, experiential behavior for the user, right? I have some example. For example, there is Adidas. Globally, they had done a campaign. It was a very big campaign, and it was kind of talked about in the media, where they created an AR experience, right, for the user. And you could actually walk into an Adidas store. You can look around virtually what shoes are there, and this was for UB19 shoes. You could pick them up, you could walk around the store, and then you could also make a purchase later on, right? So the entire experience was what matters, rather than a piece of content coming out there, or a banner saying, hey, buy now, or there is a X amount of discount. I'm not saying that's the wrong way to do it, but I'm just saying that the lifetime value of that user, you kind of sold him the experience, and then you move on to the part where you want him to make a purchase. And that's what they talk about more, and they talk about it to others, and they become your brand loyalists, right? They are your advocates. They tend to help you grow the brand. So maybe if we can have that slide, I have a example. Yeah, next one. So this was the Adidas Lens, which was on Snapchat. A user is actually walking into the store. He can, 360 degrees see around the store, experience the brand. There is a kind of a storytelling, a narrative experience, immersive thing that is happening. Uh, these are three variants of colors that are there. And then secondly, in the second video, which is there, he can try it on. So the biggest problem, what the shoe industry said was, and I guess you guys would also know, right? You would want to go to a store because you want to see how the shoe looks on you. Rather, you go to a site like a Flipkart and Amazon, but you're not sure how it will look on you, right? You have all these, lens carts, etc., where you can try on your eyeglass and eyewear, right? And that is what experiential content selling is all about. In the second example, if you play that, you can actually see that the shoe, you can wear it and have a look. So this became actually a big campaign, and I think from an experience standpoint, this was pretty cool.
So, Akshay, how do you think the conversion metrics for this campaign were versus a regular TVC running on air?
Yeah, so we've seen that the purchase intent of the user went almost 2x on these campaigns, right? And conversions are very important. Even from an engagement standpoint, the user is spending almost half a minute to a minute on this content, right? And that's very valuable for a brand to have. So, and then post-purchase analysis was, is almost 50% higher than the rest of the campaigns for the
That brings to the villain point what he mentioned. We are the villains. I mean, we bring into performance in a content. I think so. I mean, you're really killing the content rather than bringing performance. I think we need to ensure that you can't bring performance into. What's the objective of that? The objective of this was engagement. Let's be very honest. He wanted people to try. He wanted people to experience, and then purchase
And
it.
then
That's
buy,
it.
yeah. No, and I understand from Akshay that this cost lesser than actually putting a TVC together.
Actually, it does.
So, okay, Ajin, from your perspective, anything you feel that you do right in this whole space right now?
And there are a lot that we do wrong though.
Maybe that would be also very helpful, just to know what we should be doing.
No, I think, getting the right balance of content like this, which is interactive content, and your what I call as interruptive advertising, where you're just sending your message out, is the key here, right? So, consumers during their journey of life are in different phases or different moods. They will not always want to just passively watch. They will always not want to actively engage, right? So, I think the trick here is have both pieces of content and finding the right moments to sort of put it out to them. That is something I don't think I've seen anyone doing well. Even as a tech-first platform, we struggle with that because there is only so much we really know about the consumer in the real sense, right?
So much you only tell us about the consumer, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you know, we'll tell for sure. So, but yeah, I'm just saying that despite having a lot of data about the consumer, this is one problem which is still not fully cracked. Second, I think is, the beauty of this is different people are at different sort of maturity journeys, in the digital adoption or in terms of, let's say being able to adopt something of this sort. And when you are a massier brand versus when you are a more niche brand, I think you can make some of those choices as a niche brand much more. But for a massier brand, you have to serve all kinds of consumers. Given you always have a limited sort of marketing spend, how do you again prioritize a few segments versus the other? Which is where I think one of the things I would like to see more and more as marketers is, personalization and the ability to create content on the go, as it when the consumer is, sort of interfacing with you. There are some experiments we have done. There are a lot of people who have done those experiments, but that's one space I would like to really explore, to really talk to people as, an individual, then, as a massier segment.
You wanted to say something, Neil?
He said something which made me like, he said there's a lot of data. Sorry, there's no data from the e-commerce guys when we come on that perspective, not specifically talking to you. But coming to your point, Bhavna, which you initially started, I think for us, as a brand L'Oreal, I think there are three things which are really important in story selling on e-commerce or a digital platform. One I already spoke about, which are the tech world, which is Modiface or UCAM, XYZ. Those becomes our advisors. Two is influencers. And influencers, again, abused category or a word these days. I mean, we need to really understand what are we doing in influencers. I mean, I was just reading an article where it said that a lot of people blindly buy influencers from a perspective that she has 28 million followers. They talk about not my brand celebrity, but any other brand celebrity. But have you ever gone back and seen that out of the 28 million followers, 20 might be male who wants to see her, maybe a Deepika Padukone who wants to follow her. So are we utilizing that at the right extent? So does always a category influencer work, or the thousands of small influencers who are really close to the consumer, who create content of that? So that's another pillar of influencer. The third pillar, which is part of first and second for us, is creating DIY content. For a category like beauty, it's really important to educate how to do makeup, how to bring in trends into makeup, which these two pillars helps us. I think if you have a combination of these three together, you are somewhere closer to winning the selling story. If we have more data from the e-commerce guys, we are winning the story.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, panelists. And we'll just open the floor for questions if there are any right now. I think the carbohydrates
Before we go to the
second.
questions, one second. Before we go to the questions, I think we have another, our moderator has been really nice and she's asking us questions, but she represents a really great brand, has a own e-commerce platform. I think you should speak more about how your brand is into this entire category, I think.
Okay, so thanks. Yeah. Okay, the brands we represent typically are brands like Durex and Dettol, which are very, very different in the way they need to be sold to a consumer. And we've just started with our D2C platform on Durex and Veet. So these are very, very initial, early stage conversations. But what we do understand is that there is a lot of plugin which we are doing in content. So all the blog posts have a link to buy now. And interestingly, that seems to be working. So we haven't gotten into the really heavyweight stuff which Akshay has shown us, which is like all this the AI and the VR kind of a thing. But even things like that, we know that there is conversion happening, and the kind of profile of users which are coming in, like we know that 40% of the users are, the buyers on our DTC platform are women. Now that's something which none of the e-com companies could tell me, and actually that would help us develop more of a communication and our product lines as well, basis what actually is happening in reality, which we were not able to figure out till now. So that's something which is there.
One more point I would like to add to, when you asked the previous question is, see, a lot of this has to be figured out, right? This is the tech is evolving at such a rapid pace, and most of us are only catching up. Consumers are sometimes much ahead than, as a marketer you may be, in terms of what you perceive of consumers. One of the things which I've seen, at least allowing you to sort of do that, is having the right team combination in-house. So, rather than having a heavy skew on only storytellers in advertising teams or marketing teams, or a heavy skew only on let's say your tech and digital marketeers, the right combination of people who can think interactivity, the right, plus people who can actually think stories, plus a set of people who can think consumer at the same time, and data as well. I think that sort of team, and it's very hard for one person to be good at all of them. Sure. But having them sort of co-locate and sort of brainstorm on a regular basis is so very important, is what at least we have seen. And I think sometimes it just helps to, have very young people who can completely challenge everything that you may have thought as a marketeer to come in and sort of,
Yeah.
give those perspectives.
No, very, very true. I think we all have our silos of working, and as traditional marketers, we really think of our perspective being the best. But today, the world is, really evolving far quicker. And I'm sure Akshay here has seen it the
Absolutely.
quickest on the whole Snapchat platform. Which at least just a quick check. How many of you use Snapchat? Oops.
That's good.
That's a good number. We weren't expecting that. I mean, if you look at this panel, I think only Akshay is the one who would be using it.
So I always say that you should, as a marketer, look at from your customers' point of view, who are using it, right? A lot of times, I'm not saying you guys, but I interact with people who are like, in their 40s, 50s, and they're like, "Ye kya hai, bhai?" Matlab, but it's not that they are using it, right? It's the end consumer is using it, and they need to see it from their lens.
He's going regional. Huh? I mean, I never imagined Snapchat in regional. I mean, they're going regional just to get more audience, I guess.
Yeah, we just started with 5 languages, beta testing. Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah,
we
open to
should
questions.
open it to questions.
Yeah.
This question is to or any of the panelists. As we hear all of you talk about storytelling versus story selling, and the impact of digital on your businesses, are you finding that the defining of marketing budgets or ad budgets between online and traditional marketing is becoming a bit of a fight in your system? Because if you are getting better conversions, then like we all are seeing data which suggests that there's more bang for the buck online. So are you kind of mothballing traditional marketing spends totally?
Is the question that you're finding it difficult to get more spends on digital? Is that the question?
Actually, I'm saying that are you mothballing or killing the traditional marketing spends,
No.
given your better ROIs and everything else?
Right. So if I have to answer from a L'Oreal perspective, to be very honest, we spend close to 25 to 30% on digital, but at the same time we are 75% on the traditional marketing. If you would have seen, if anyone is there from Bombay, you would have seen that we have used out of home in makeup. I mean, that's how the brands are focusing on traditional as well. My 60% of the money goes on traditional media. I think TV, when we say that OTT is increasing, TV will die, no. I think newer and newer audiences are going on television, and the upgradation of audiences are going on digital, and it's all about frequency. So you reach a larger audience on television, and you reach them again in a different way on digital. I don't see that traditional will die sooner or later. Digital becoming that big. That's my perspective.
No, and very, very cliched usage, but we've seen all the digital companies and the e-commerce platforms advertising enough and more on traditional media as well. So traditional is not going anywhere. Your awareness, your brand interest will be still made on the traditional media.
Ma'am, isn't that an easy way out and a safe harbor? Because if you guys are saying what you're saying on the ad tech side, then you're beating one argument. If this is so good, then you should be spending, bulk of your money over here.
No, I'll tell you, I think, I'm just talking from a digital first organization's perspective. As a marketer, even if I want to spend, let's say, 90% of my money is on digital, the challenge is there are so many digital platforms. There is no parity today, right? In terms of how do I measure performance on a consistent manner. And I actually come from a digital first mindset. I always used to think, why do we spend so much money on traditional, right? At least on television, when most of at least our consumers may not be, consuming most of their time on television, but be watching that content actually on OTT platforms, right? But somehow TV has come up with a measurement methodology which is as inefficient as it is, but it still works and it still sells, right? Digital is still struggling. You talk to a TikTok versus you talk to a YouTube versus you talk to a Facebook. Everyone has their own ways, and some of them are actually closed ecosystems, right? So if I have to talk to one consumer, I don't know how many times I'm sort of praying and praying when I talk to like 5 different platforms, which is where there is still reluctance in going fully digital right now, right? I don't see that. Also, what we have to think about is, what is the first screen for the consumer, right? Rather than what is the first screen in my mind in sitting in my office, right? So for a lot of the millennials, or I would say even Gen Z, the first screen is actually digital and the second screen is television. But then there is an out of home, which is an impact screen, which is irrespective of what age group you are in, right? So you have to be just smart about, what is your marketing mix and the purpose of it. There may be certain campaigns which are actually to create brand sort of salience and where you have to be on the larger screens to create impact. And there are certain campaigns which can very well be, bottom of the line. But the problem of shifting money is the measurement, right? And that I think is not getting solved very soon.
Rightly said. I think I'm waiting for Bach to launch Ecom. I don't know where they're launching it. And then we can answer to your question.
One question? Sure, we'll just take one last question.
Any of you can share any success stories in terms of telling and selling in 10 seconds?
Say that again. Telling and selling in 10 seconds.
Yeah, because most of the ads are now becoming smaller and smaller, right? So, you need to tell and sell, right? That's what is the essence of what I'm understanding. Have there been any use cases or success stories of any examples which worked, so it'll enlighten the audience and it'll be useful?
No, as I actually said in my first point is the entire Instagram, if you see, it's telling and selling in less than few seconds, right? So actually you are getting inspired by a visual and then you are acting on it, either commenting, sharing, or sometimes shopping also, right? The entire e-commerce ecosystem is built on, inspiration by a look and then sort of making an impulsive purchase, right? Now, problem is when you think about stories, we only think about one particular format of motion picture stories, right? So that is not the only way to tell and sell. I mean, if I see something of what Adidas has done here, I think it is actually fantastic, right? Because in the first 1 second, at least I get curious to know what is going to happen, and then actually I get engaged over a period of time. So a bunch of these actually, if you look around, but just move out of that traditional way of looking at content and the formats.
Adding to that, 10 seconds, Snap is where, content disappears, after 10 seconds. So it's that extreme, so there is a lot of storytelling and story selling that is possible. It's moved on to that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot, panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.